Sergio Perez has the hottest seat in Formula One, the infamous Red Bull second seat. And as of the 2024 mid-season break, he's currently facing the lowest point in his whole career, with many labeling him as damaged goods or washed up. And it is for good reason. Perez has scored just 28 points since the Miami Grand Prix, which equates to just over one Grand Prix victory. In that same time, his Red Bull teammate Max Verstappen has scored 141 points and single-handedly kept the team ahead of McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. But despite the poor performances and rumours of Perez losing his seat, Red Bull have always stood by the driver, confirming earlier this week that he'll remain in the Red Bull seat beyond the summer break. So what does Red Bull see in Sergio Perez, and what might the future hold for him? Today, I wanted to remind everyone of the forgotten Sergio Perez, the Perez that could drive from last on the grid to the top spot on the podium. Perez was heralded as the tire whisperer, the Mexican Minister of Defense. This is the forgotten talent of Sergio Perez.
It's Sergio Perez!
Like many Formula One legends, Sergio Perez's journey began at just 6 years old, showing early signs of his future greatness. In his first season of karting, he claimed 4 victories and he finished as runner-up in the category. By 1998, he became one of the youngest champions in the junior ranks. In 2005, Perez moved to Europe to chase his dream, competing in Formula BMW in Germany for Keke Rosberg's team, and he quickly made a name for himself. By 2007, he'd switched to the British Formula 3 Championship, and he won that comfortably. His journey then continued into GP2, where he drove for Campos and then Arden International. By the end of the 2010 season, he was the runner-up, only behind other future Formula One driver, Pastor Maldonado. His talent was undeniable. In the autumn of 2010, Perez was announced as Sauber's replacement for the departing Nick Heidfeld. This move also brought him into the Ferrari Driver Academy. Perez was now a rising Formula One driver with a great career ahead of him, which would be plagued by ups and downs. Perez had a fairly good 2011 season, but the 2012 season was where he truly rose to fame. Starting at the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix, he was starting in 7th. The lights went out in treacherous conditions at Sepang. Nearly everyone started on the intermediate tyres, but Perez was the first to stop for full wets, and it was the right decision, as he was running in 4th by the time the race was halted due to that torrential rain. After a half-hour break, Perez made the most of the second race start, overtaking Mark Webber for P2 after Jenson Button was called into the pits. The track was soaking wet, and the drivers were relying more on their instinct than their vision to drive. The strategy game wasn't any easier. Hamilton had a troubled pit stop, and it cost him dearly, and Perez was now the race leader. A cautious late call for Inters allowed Fernando Alonso to slip past him. Perez's call to go back into slicks came a lap too late, and with Alonso already in the lead, Perez showed no mercy, trying to tackle the 2-time world champion. He was 0.6 quicker in the second sector alone, and 1.2 seconds up to this lap alone. Sergio Perez was very quick, and he was doing very, very well, but he was behind Alonso, and Alonso did everything he could to keep Perez behind. As the race was closing out, there was a mistake by Perez where he ran wide, and it effectively ruined any chance he had at a win. The win had slipped through his hands. However, it had been an otherwise masterful race for Perez, an incredible display of his talent behind the wheel. Perez's first Formula One podium was a masterful statement that he was not to be underestimated. His 2012 season continued to be strong. He had another podium in Canada and then another one in Italy. And that third podium of the season at the Italian Grand Prix was from all the way back in 12th on the grid. It was a cherry on top of a remarkable second year in Formula One. While Hamilton ended up winning the race that day in Monza, it was Perez who stole the show. His expert tyre management worked his magic again, allowing him to extend his stint on hard tyres and then push to the max on that medium compound. He relentlessly made up his way through the field in the Sauber, overtaking the likes of Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso, and he managed to cross the line in 2nd and confirm himself at the time as one of the best racing drivers on the planet.
I would never expect something like that, but the most important thing is that we never give up. We always give our best, and the result is a great podium, a fantastic podium.
But like every Formula One driver, the ultimate goal is to become a world champion. And for Perez, that meant his next step was to find a championship-worthy team. Perez's impressive driving was enough to convince McLaren that he should replace the departing Lewis Hamilton for the 2013 season. This move also marked the end of his time as a member of the Ferrari Driver Academy. However, unfortunately for Perez, neither he nor his teammate Jenson Button made it to the top steps of the podium that season. It was the first time since 1980 that McLaren failed to score a podium, a stark departure from the team's usual high standards. Perez was in the right team at the wrong time. After his underwhelming stint with McLaren, Perez ended up signing a lucrative deal to drive for Force India, joining an all-new lineup alongside the former Sauber driver Nico Hülkenberg. In a season that was dominated by the Mercedes pairing of Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, wins, or even podiums for that matter, were hard to come by. When heavy rain dampened the start of the 2016 Monaco Grand Prix, it was Perez's moment to shine. He started from 7th on the grid, and there was zero visibility due to the blinding spray ahead. Staying away from the barriers required enormous talent and a little bit of luck. Conveniently, on this day, Perez had both. It was a perfect strategy from Force India, and it saw him go long on the first stint, allowing him to overcut his opponents. He then switched to the dry tyres earlier than his rivals, achieving an undercut in the same race. His keen sense of timing for both the pit stops and the race elevated him all the way to the podium, earning an unforgettable moment at one of Formula One's greatest circuits. Further into that same season, fans and drivers alike were excited for the inaugural Formula One race at the Baku City Street Circuit, a new track at the time, and it was hosting the European Grand Prix. And Baku did not disappoint. After qualifying an incredible second quickest, Perez was dragged 5 places down due to a grid penalty due to a gearbox change. So he was starting from 7th, and the Mercedes-powered driver managed to make up 2 places with the perfect start. As the other teams were struggling with the high track temperatures, Perez's masterful tyre management again made a 2-stop strategy work when others couldn't, a pattern which keeps occurring in almost all of his outstanding performances so far. Lying in 4th position for most of the race, Kimi Raikkonen was ahead, but he was compromised by a 5-second penalty, which was to be added to his race time. Perez smartly stayed within range before finally overtaking him on the last lap, even though he didn't need to. He finished this season with 101 points, taking 7th in the Drivers' Championship and helping Force India to 4th in the Constructors' standings that year, his best finish again. He was linked with many moves for the 2017 season, but once all was said and done, he re-signed for another year with Force India, this time alongside Mercedes Academy driver Esteban Ocon. There were fireworks between the two drivers, there were multiple collisions during races, and a lot of friction between them. However, despite all this friction, Force India continued with that same lineup for 2018. 2 years after his podium in Baku's first ever race, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was about to become a favourite for Perez. After the first lap, it was almost over, as he had a broken front wing and a 5-second penalty. He was at the back of the grid. But again, this is Perez, a driver who tends to exceed expectations when the races are chaotic and he's starting from further down the grid. And both of these factors were met in the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. 6 retirements and 3 safety cars followed in a race that was full of drama and opportunity. Despite the initial setbacks, a combination of Force India's strong pace, Perez's perfect tyre management, and his overall race expertise helped him maximise every single opportunity. He flew from 5th to 3rd in a heartbeat, soaring past Sebastian Vettel's flat-spotted Ferrari and Valtteri Bottas's punctured Mercedes to secure a remarkable podium. He even claimed that was the 2 best laps of his whole career. But again, that year, Perez was facing an even greater challenge, and it wasn't on the racetrack, but off it. With the team facing severe financial problems and potential bankruptcy, Perez and other creditors took legal action into place to put the team into administration. This move effectively saved the team, which was ultimately rescued by a consortium led by billionaire Lawrence Stroll, father of the then Williams driver Lance Stroll. The team was then reborn as Racing Point Force India for the 2018 Belgian Grand Prix, and it was a dream scenario. Perez ended in 5th and Ocon in 6th. In 2019, Lance Stroll ended up joining Perez at Racing Point, surprise surprise, and despite managing points finishes in 11 races, Perez also endured a run of 8 pointless Grand Prix, the worst streak of his career so far. However, in 2020, they unveiled the new RP20, and it looked surprisingly competitive, likely because it was incredibly similar to the championship-winning Mercedes W10 from the year prior, which a lot of people were unhappy about. Not that Perez was complaining though. The pink Mercedes was his most competitive car yet, and Perez signed a contract extension to drive for the team through 2022 and scored impressive points finishes in the first 3 races of the season. However, ahead of the British Grand Prix, Perez became the first Formula One driver to test positive for coronavirus, causing him to miss 2 races. Upon his return, Perez had a streak of 9 consecutive points finishes as the pink Mercedes lived up to its promise. However, there were rumours circulating that 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel would be joining Racing Point. On the eve of the Tuscan Grand Prix, Perez made the shock announcement that he'd be leaving the team at the end of the season, even though he'd just announced he was driving for them until 2022. So, without a drive for the upcoming season, Perez continued to deliver impressive performances. In Turkey, he hung on to second place under intense pressure from both the Ferraris, capping off an incredible wet weather drive. But it was the penultimate race of the season, the Sakhir Grand Prix, where Perez would prove why he deserved a seat in Formula 1. It was the second to last race of the season of 2020. The headlines were all about George Russell, who was filling in for Lewis Hamilton. He was out with COVID. George was the fastest in practice, but Bottas ended up putting it on pole, with Russell closely behind, and then Verstappen in third. Back in fifth, however, was Sergio Perez, still without a seat for the following season and with nothing to lose. The lights went out and Russell swept past Bottas. Leclerc, who started in fourth, ended up making contact with Perez, putting him into a spin and damaging his suspension. Verstappen ended up hitting the wall to avoid contact with Perez, and Charles was also out. Immediately, there was a safety car called, and Perez managed to get back to the pits. There were still 82 laps remaining, but Perez was at the back of the grid. His race was not over. He was a man on a mission. He started working his way through the field as soon as the safety car ended, making his way up to P11 in just 5 laps. But by lap 21, he was already within the points and battling past Vettel, Albon and Norris. He kept fighting and he ended up pitting on lap 48, but it put him into traffic. After this pit stop, he had unbelievable pace though. He was the quickest car on track. And then Lady Luck was finally on Perez's side. A brief virtual safety car baited some of the cars ahead of him into the pits, but it ended before they could gain any advantage. This ended up promoting Perez to 5th, with newer tyres than those ahead. A podium was on the table. He just had to make it past his teammate Lance Stroll, who he made it by easily, and then Esteban Ocon, who was overtaken shortly after on merit. Most would have expected the finishing order to end there, but the 2 Mercedes ahead had other ideas. With 20 laps remaining, F1 debutant Jack Aitken, replacing Russell in the Williams, ended up spinning in the final corner, and he broke his front wing and left it on the track, which brought out the safety car. During this period, Mercedes then decided to stop Russell and then Bottas with a double stack because they had a clear advantage. Russell pitted and went on his way, but when Bottas pitted, they realized they'd put the wrong tyres onto their drivers' cars, meaning they had to put Bottas back out on the original old hards and call Russell back in to correct the tyres as he had a mismatched set. This then promoted Perez, Ocon and Lance into the top 3, with the Mercedes then running in 4th and 5th. As the race restarted, Russell managed to charge through to 2nd, and he was catching Perez, but down on luck, Russell was forced to pit again as he developed a slow puncture. Sergio Perez came home to win the 2020 Sakhir Grand Prix, a driver who had raced 190 times in Formula 1 and been on the podium 9 times before finally stepping on the top step. This was a magical drive from Perez, who up until that point had been the longest ever Formula 1 career without a victory. It's clear that his career had been a nightmare of highs and lows, but the recent challenges and criticism make it easy to forget the times when his talent and resilience have been on display. His ability to monitor his tyres, bounce back from bad positions, and deliver stellar performances in subpar cars is undeniable. Looking ahead though, with Perez's current position, his future in Formula 1 seems almost over. However, if the stars do align, I do hope he finds the right team, and I believe he does have some great performance ahead of him. It just might not be in Formula 1. I'd love to know what you think is going to happen with Perez moving forward. Let me know down below. And if you have enjoyed this video, watch my video on Daniel Ricciardo on screen now.